Brought to you by...
Horror cinema has long served as a reflection of cultural anxieties, using spectacle and violence to explore the darker corners of human experience. Within this tradition, filmmakers continually push the boundaries of what audiences can endure, transforming fear into both entertainment and commentary. The genre thrives on contradiction, the beautiful and the grotesque, the sacred and the profane, the familiar made terrifying. Through these juxtapositions, horror becomes more than a vehicle of shock. It becomes a mirror for our fascination with transgression, trauma, and survival in a world that often feels both absurd and utterly cruel. Hello friends, happy holidays, and welcome back to ETF. Damien Leone's Terrifier 3 marks the return of Art the Clown, the sadistic and silent killer whose presence has become iconic in modern horror. Following the success of Terrifier 2, Leone expands both the mythos and the aesthetic ambitions of his cult slasher series. Set against the backdrop of Christmas this time around, Terrifier 3 fuses familiar festive imagery with grotesque violence, pushing the franchise toward both higher production value and more ambitious thematic terrain. While the film succeeds in its visceral spectacle and visual design, it also struggles to balance its heightened gore with meaningful character development and coherent narrative structure. Ultimately, Terrifier 3 serves as both an evolution and an overindulgence, a film that reaches for depth but remains most effective when reveling in the depraved energy that made the series infamous. The most striking feature of Terrifier 3 is its transformation of Christmas into a stage of horror. By setting the film during the holiday season and dressing Art the Clown as a deranged Santa Claus, Leone constructs a world in which traditional symbols of joy, innocence, and family are perverted into instruments of fear. The contrast between twinkling lights, cheery music, and the film's relentless violence creates a rich visual and emotional dissonance. The festive setting becomes not merely decorative, but thematically essential. Christmas itself is corrupted, exposing the thin veneer of civility and comfort that masks underlying chaos. In this way, Terrifier 3 mirrors a lineage of horror films, from Black Christmas to Krampus, that exploits the season's cultural warmth to amplify the impact of cruelty. Yet Leone's approach is more anarchic and less symbolic. While the film gestures toward Christian imagery and moral contrast, these ideas remain underdeveloped. The setting generates atmosphere and irony, but its deeper meanings dissolve under the sheer force of the film's violence. If Terrifier 2 began to reframe Art the Clown's mythology through the eyes of Sienna Shaw, Terrifier 3 continues her story by grounding it in trauma and recovery. Sienna, played again by Lauren Lavera, emerges as one of the few emotionally coherent figures in the series, haunted by her previous encounters with Art and struggling with post-traumatic stress. She embodies the final girl archetype, with an unusual sense of continuity and gravity. Through her, Leone attempts to inject the film with psychological dimension, exploring how the horror of survival lingers long after the physical danger ends. Lavera's performance offers a surprisingly grounded emotional core, and her presence helps elevate the material beyond mere spectacle. Yet, this development also exposes the limits of Leone's storytelling. For all its ambition, Terrifier 3 never fully reconciles its emotional through lines with its excessive body count. The film oscillates between introspective moments, Sienna's quiet attempts at normalcy, and long, unbroken sequences of sadistic violence. The result is structurally dissonant, two films competing within one frame, neither fully integrated. Art the Clown himself remains a fascinating but opaque figure. His silence and exaggerated pantomime make him hypnotic to watch, yet his motivations, mythos, and supernatural aspects are rendered increasingly incoherent. Leone toys with expanding Art's mythology, introducing new visions and religious illusions, but these gestures remain ornamental, functioning more as aesthetic garnish than narrative architecture. Of course, the film's primary appeal lies in its aesthetic excess. The film is an unapologetic showcase of practical effects, prosthetics, and gore. As I have mentioned in the past, Leone, who began as a makeup effects artist, continues to demonstrate his mastery of tactile horror. Skin tears, bones snap, and gore gushes with handcrafted precision. In a digital age, Terrifier 3's reliance on physical effects gives it a grim authenticity, making the violence both repulsive and weirdly artful. Compared to the earlier installments, the film also boasts a more cinematic polish, dynamic lighting, smoother camera work, and a more deliberate use of color and shadow. The Christmas lights in particular become tools of composition, illuminating acts of violence with an ironic glow. However, this aesthetic triumph comes at the cost of pacing and narrative momentum. Leone's indulgence in shock value often overwhelms the storytelling. Scenes of torture stretch beyond necessity, prioritizing endurance over rhythm. The victims rarely give personalities or motives, existing merely as canvases of carnage. The gore becomes not a narrative climax, but an aesthetic loop, a relentless cycle of brutality that risks desensitizing the viewer. For fans of extreme horror, this excess is precisely the point. For others, it exposes the film's lack of restraint and thematic cohesion. Another thing that I'd like to touch on is that in this third installment, the Terrifier series reconfigures the balance of power that has defined its previous films. Where Art the Clown once stood as the uncontested embodiment of chaos, a silent, sadistic force of nature, this film begins to reposition him as something closer to an instrument of horror than its originator. The film reframes his violence not as an expression of individual malevolence, but as an extension of another will, that of Victoria Hayes, the survivor turned acolyte whose twisted devotion to Art transforms her into the series' new axis of evil. This shift complicates the franchise's internal mythology, suggesting that the horror itself can evolve from mere spectacle into a commentary on corruption, influence, and the contagious allure of violence. Art's earlier appearances established him as a void, a figure without psychology or motive, terrifying precisely because of his opacity. In T3, however, this lack of interiority is reinterpreted as servitude. Art becomes less a free agent of chaos and more a conduit for the sadistic designs of Victoria, whose growing dominance blurs the line between victim and villain. Once the mutilated survivor of his attacks, Victoria emerges here as the director of the horror rather than its subject. Her physical disfigurement, which once signified trauma, now symbolizes transformation, the birth of a disciple who understands and perpetuates Art's madness more consciously than he ever could. Through this inversion, the film introduces a disturbing commentary on the mechanics of evil. Victoria's manipulation of Art turns him into an object, a tool of spectacle, exposing how violence can be reproduced and aestheticized by those who have been consumed by it. Art's silence and physicality make him a perfect vessel, a killer without conscience, directionless until given one. In effect, the film externalizes the process of indoctrination, showing how trauma and obsession can repurpose monstrosity into an ideology. What might be viewed as Victoria's control over Art blurs authorship. Whose violence is it now? hers as the architect of atrocity, or his as the performer of it. This transformation also repurposes the audience's gaze, where previous entries invited us to fear art's unpredictability. T3 invites us to recognize the perverse intelligence behind him. Victoria becomes a kind of auteur of suffering, orchestrating cruelty with an almost cinematic precision. Her presence shifts the horror from the physical to the psychological, not simply what art does, but what drives him to do it, and who benefits from the display. In this sense, Victoria embodies a more contemporary villainy, one rooted in manipulation, influence, and the ability to turn others' violence into one's own form of authorship. By rendering Art the Clown a weapon in someone else's hands, Terrifier 3 both diminishes and deepens him. He becomes less a character and more an idea, a physical manifestation of Victoria's descent into fanaticism. The film's final moments suggest that the greatest horror may not be the killer himself, but the mind that learns to wield him. In this evolution, the series confronts the unsettling truth that monstrosity can be inherited, replicated, and controlled, and that sometimes the scariest thing is not the clown behind the mask, but the person who tells him when to smile. Taken as a whole, Terrifier 3 illustrates both the potential and the pitfalls of modern independent horror. It expands the scope of its low-budget origins, with stronger production values and thematic ambition, yet remains anchored in its roots in exploitation cinema. The film's most successful moments occur when Leone fuses style with concept, as in the opening massacre that merges Christmas cheer with nihilistic absurdity. But it falters whenever it attempts to explain itself. Still, the performance of Lavera and David Howard Thornton as Art lend a curious gravitas to the chaos, grounding the film just enough to make it more than a string of set pieces. Terrifier 3 is both a triumph of craft and a testament to excess. It pushes the boundaries of practical gore effects and visual spectacle, while striving, not always successfully, for psychological and thematic depth. Leone's vision of Art the Clown as a perverse Santa encapsulates the film's dual nature, playful yet grotesque, ambitious yet crude. Though it stumbles in coherence and pacing, Terrifier 3 stands as a bold statement within the slasher genre, a work that refuses to sanitize horror, preferring instead to confront the audience with its raw, unfiltered extremes. Whether viewed as a carnival of carnage or an experiment in transgressive art, it solidifies Art the Clown as one of contemporary horror's most unforgettable figures. Hey friends, Future Ollie here, breaking in to remind you that ETF has a Patreon. And on that Patreon, you can get yourself access to some fun, new, and different types of content made exclusively for our patrons. Over there, you will find That Sinking Feeling, a show that discusses horrifying concepts in our reality that terrify me to my core. Real Hot Takes, which discusses some hot takes about the film industry, analyzing them on a more intense level. And In Defense Of, which is a series that sets out to defend ideas, concepts, and practices in the film industry that some people look down on. All of these are monthly released shows that you can enjoy by becoming a patron, along with exclusive access to the ETF Digital Archive, which gets you an invite to our Plex server, where we are creating a library to preserve our VHS collection that we want to share with all of you. So come check us out on Patreon using the link in the description and help support the channel. We are constantly working on and creating new content of different kinds, and some of it you can enjoy on patreon.com/embracethefilm. Now, back to the video. Well, friends, that's gonna be all for now. If you're interested in this film, I urge you to check it out for yourself and formulate your own thoughts and opinions about it. I hope you come share those thoughts in the comments. Let me know if there are any movies that you would like to see discussed on this channel. I always love to hear from you guys, and I do my best to try and respond to everyone. As always, I have put a link down in the description to a physical copy of the film, if one exists, so that you can add it to your collection. Using that link helps out the channel, and that is always appreciated. Furthermore, if you liked the video, I urge you to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you aren't already. I know many of you watching aren't yet subscribed, so help support the channel. Subscribe. If you'd like to go the extra mile and support the channel even more, we do have a Patreon. And if you sign up for our Rated R tier level, you can get yourself access to the ETF Digital Archive. We get a lot of compliments about the VHS collection that you guys see in the background of almost all of our videos. Well, we have been hard at work slowly digitizing that collection and creating a place where we can share it with all of you. Thanks to the help of the Plex platform, one of this channel's sponsors, we can now do just that. This is our way of doing our part to help preserve that gritty, nostalgic VHS look and feeling before it's gone forever. So as a special thank you for becoming a Rated R tier member, you will be added to our ETF Archive Plex server, so that you can stream our VHS collection from anywhere at any time. It's basically like having a streaming service for VHS, which I think is pretty cool. We also have a Mercari store, where you can go and get yourself a little piece of the ETF archive. While collecting VHS, Blu-rays, and DVDs over many years, we wind up with lots of duplicates, and we unfortunately can't store them all. So on our Mercari shop, we have those for sale. Purchasing those not only expands your collection, but makes room for us to expand ours. All the links for everything are down in the description. Until next time, stay safe, and as always, thanks for watching.